Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. Today we're going to be finishing the Sparrows quilt for sure. So we're going to start with getting the sashing along the bottom of each row that we need to and sewing those together as we go. So it should come together pretty quickly. Again, this is the Sparrows quilt by Pen and Paper Patterns. If you're interested, I've got a link down below. If you want to see some of the other videos I've done, go ahead and check those out. So I've already got my first row here from the top that I'm going to be putting the sashing along the bottom. Now, like I mentioned last time, I basically have this giant string of sashing, and I just went through, sewed every single piece of it together rather than trying to measure and cut. I don't have a measuring table that's that long, so it would have to be sort of guiding it or, measuring it with either a paper tape or moving a board, and I just don't think that that's very accurate, as well as I never find that my piecing is 100% perfect. So going ahead and just lining this along the edge of each one and cutting it to size to fit my strip of the quilt works so much better for me and is a lot less headache. And I think it's a lot faster than trying to measure something that you don't have a measuring table big enough for. So without further ado, let's get into this. And because we've only got a little bit of sashing to do and the borders, then we might be able to talk about designing this quilt and kind of go in a little bit more in detail on how I kind of set that up after I finish a quilt. But let's jump into this. All right, everybody, so we have got the entire quilt top done other than the borders. So I've got to go around and do all of the borders for this quilt, and then the quilt top is going to be done. And then we're going to talk about how I design, or how I'm going to start thinking up designs, loading it, all of those things, because I've never actually talked about actually shown how I do it. I've talked about how I design my quilts using my iPad, but I'm going to actually show you guys how I do it. So stay tuned for that, and let's get some borders done. Okay, everybody, so it's done, and I'm gonna go ahead and lay it out so that I can show you guys. I've got all of the borders on. All right, everybody, there is that beautiful quilt top finished, and I think it looks pretty cool. I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. So I know that this is what the quilt top was supposed to look like, and I mean, it's not exactly the same, but I'm gonna have to say that I think it looks pretty darn good, and I'm okay with it. Okay, so for some of you, this is where the process would end, and you would send it off to your long arm quilter and they would get to quilting it. For others, you guys are going to be sitting down, maybe just doing stitch in the ditch around all of the seams on your sit-down sewing machine, which is awesome as well. For me, the next step really becomes, what am I going to quilt in this? Now, I have this giant quilt here that I have got to finish, so I have a little bit of time to play with the design, but I thought I would tell you guys how I kind of go about setting this up and showing it to you on my iPad. So the first step would be, after I've laid this out like this, I'm going to take a picture on my phone. Now, I'm videoing on my phone, so I can't really video myself taking a picture, but I'd basically either stand up in a chair, or if I don't have to stand up, just get a high enough picture that I can kind of get a mostly flat picture of this quilt. And so you can see basically like this would probably be okay, in all honesty. And that's just because I want to be able to design on something that looks fairly flat. It just helps your lines. You know, if it's a bit angled, you're going to get a little bit of a different view than if it's totally flat, right? So if we have an angle to it, it could change it a little bit. It's not the end of the world, but just trying to get as flat of a picture as we can. And then we're going to import that into the iPad. So let me go ahead and just take a picture here, and then we'll go on to step 2. All right, everybody. So we are back here, and what I'm going to try and show you guys is kind of how I do all of this with my iPad. And of course, it's a little bit weird because I've got multiple screens going here, so please give a little bit of leeway for me on this because I've never done a format like this. So the first thing I did was to take a picture. Once I got my picture, I'm going to airdrop it from my phone to my iPad. And once you airdrop it, you're going to click on that. And actually, once you airdrop it, you don't even have to click on the galleries. It pops up here, okay? The next step from there is that you're going to go up to this button up here, and you're going to upload it, okay? And what you're going to actually upload it to is to Procreate. So that is this button right down here, and we're going to click on that. It's going to say it's sending to Procreate. Now, obviously, you do have to have the Procreate app on your iPad. And, okay, so you do have to have the Procreate on there. So all you'd have to do, so what you would do is go to your app store if you don't have this before you do any uploading of anything. And you're going to go ahead and search for it. I bought this like several years ago, so I'm not even sure how much this costs right now. And of course, because I have it, it doesn't actually show. But I will tell you this, the one nice thing is that this is a one-time purchase, and there we go. So it's $19.99. There's that price right there. I believe. Well, this says Procreate Dreams, so maybe it's not. Well, if I can look it up, I'll look it up and see if I can find the cost for you guys. But it's a one-time purchase. There's no other purchases really required after that, which is nice. There's no subscription. There's nothing. You just have purchased this. So once you have it, you're going to open it up. It's going to show where you've imported it. You guys can see all the stuff I've been doing. And now we have got the Procreate app open, and we have imported, which you saw once I opened it, it imported it and popped it up on that first left-hand corner, and then we just click on it. And once you click on it, it's going to pull it up here. And that's the picture that I took. And the first thing that you really want to do is you want to go up here to this button right here. And this button, once you click it, is going to show you these layers, okay? We want to add a new layer. This is the most important thing that I can tell you. And you just do that by clicking the plus button up here. And then you've got layer 2, which is blank, layer 1, which is your actual quilt picture, and then you've got a background color. Why this is important is because if you are designing on layer 1 right on your quilt, whenever you go to erase something, you're going to erase the picture. And that's a bit of a bummer, especially if you're not wanting to erase the picture, okay? So that is why the first step that I always do, and sometimes I forget, but I try to always do, is to go ahead and go on to the layers, add layer 2, and then click on it. This blue line right here tells you that this is the layer that you are writing on, all right? And that way, if you mess up, quote unquote mess up, because it may not be a mess up. So if you have that on there, you can then go back and erase it, delete, maybe you just don't like the whole thing, and you can delete the whole thing, and you still have this picture right here to look at with no repercussions at all, okay? So the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to pull out my pen here. So I do use my Apple pen, and I have the first version Apple pen, and I use it to draw in here. This is honestly for me and my iPad, other than just looking at internet, YouTube, shopping stuff, or traveling and watching movies, this has been a game changer for me. And I have used my iPad and my Apple Pencil more than I ever thought I would because of it. All right, so whenever I am using my Apple Pencil, the first thing I'm going to look at is my pencil. And so you just click on that button. I tend to use the technical pencil right here for drawing. And then I have found that with every single one, I have to just test the size. So I'll just draw down here. And you can see this line is way too small. All right, so I'm going to come back over here, and I'm just going to delete that with this button here, basically like an undo button. I'm going to then come over here, and this bar right here is going to tell me how big my line is. But what's really weird is I do not find this to be consistent across the board on the quilts that I'm drawing on. And I don't know if that's just the size. I'm not really sure why that is. So I've just upped it a little bit. Now I'm going to come back down here. I feel like that's a bit better of a line. I think we could do a little bit more. I feel like that's a good size line. So the main thing I'm looking for here is a line that I can see easily on the quilt, and that that it's just a good size, but it's not too big, because so we can move right on here, but once we scroll into this here, we want to be able to see it a little bit easier, and we want to be able to see our line, but still be able to see the quilt itself. If I need to change color, so I accidentally changed color up here, you're going to go to this button over here, and that is going to tell us the color that we're at. We just want to go back to black, right? So you can move this around. So if you have a quilt that you want to do a different color on, you can adjust it. If you'd rather draw in white, you can do that. I generally like to draw in black for my quilt, so I like to keep it on black. And then this is our starting point of where we can go. And you can decide where you want to start. Now, this is a repeating quilt, so sometimes I will start by just literally drawing basically like it was Stitch in the Ditch around. I'm doing this one-handedly, which is a bit difficult. Let me reposition this here for you guys. Okay, sorry about that. So then we're just going to draw, stitch in the ditch around this. And you may decide, you know what, which I think I have decided in this instance, that I feel like this line is a little bit big. So I'm just going to drop it down some. I could go back through, I could erase these, but I'm not going to. Again, this is just me sort of starting and coming up with ideas on how to do my design for this quilt. And this is what I do for every single one of my quilts. Now, sometimes I have a starting point and I have an idea of what I want to do, and sometimes I don't. A lot of you guys said that I should do feathers. I think that's a really cool idea. I did watch the video. Somebody had commented, oh, I can't remember what her name is, but there was a video. Okay, so Quilting Curve Studio, that is who actually the YouTube video was by. And in her video, she did a lot of different, well, every bird had a different pattern on it, which was really, really cool. A thought that I honestly had, but I don't know. There's a part of me that hates to like almost, I don't know, you almost feel like you're copying somebody at this point. I think I'm going to go ahead here. So I'm just kind of drawing on here while I talk to you guys. And I think I'm going to go ahead and decrease the size of this. I feel like just, you know, depending on how big your photo is and everything, I feel like you can change. I think that's what changes how big your pin needs to be. So I had definitely thought when I saw this, and these are not even at all, so I apologize for that, but I had definitely thought about doing these U-shaped designs, basically very similar to the armadillo quilt, if you guys saw that quilt. And if this bothers you, okay, so if you guys are looking at this going, oh my gosh, I need those lines to be straight, another thing that you could do would be to go in, add another layer up here, okay, sit on that layer, and what you could do would be to go in and draw your lines that you want it to be. And this is really cool for trying to just do some designs that maybe you need that sort of, maybe that's where if you were on an actual quilt, you would be drawing your lines, right? You would be using your blue erase marker to draw in those lines. So this is just another way to do that. I don't know why that U is being real funky there. So in order to try and straighten things, I can hold it down and Procreate will automatically correct any errors. Now, obviously, I don't get too concerned about this. This is just a design drawing. This is just to give me an idea. Sometimes it's nice if you're really wanting a nice straight line to have that, but otherwise, it's not a requirement. Okay, now, once you've done that, what you can do here is you can go back to your layer that you added to draw those lines, go on here, choose your eraser, and then you just go through and erase them. And this is why that's so cool, because it didn't touch any of the other lines that you were drawing. And then you can go back to this. So obviously this is not completely fleshed out. I'm just doodling on here, but this is literally what I do, guys, to come up with ideas for how am I going to quilt a quilt. Oh, I'm still on the eraser. Let me switch back to that. Okay, so we could do this. Now, obviously the upside to this is that I can move my quilt around. And if you are free motion quilting this on a sit down, then you can have that option. If you're doing this on a long arm machine, then you really don't have that option of flipping the quilt around. So you're kind of, maybe take that into consideration if you're doing this, because if you get too crazy, remember you're going to have to be able to quilt this sitting straight in front of you without moving it, which in some instances could get a little bit difficult. And I am literally just drawing some crazy feathers on here, not really thinking much while I talk to you guys about this. So hopefully this has been helpful. Let me know what you think. Obviously, I'm going to put some more ideas on here as well, but this is basically what I do. All right, everybody, so that was me drawing on my iPad, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I'm probably going to do a little bit more doodling. I might add that on to the end of this video if you want to stick around and watch. Just trying to come up with some ideas and see what seems to work in that space. So I think this is a really cool idea, especially for those who are new quilters who are trying to come up with ideas or trying to see how designs fit in a space. It's really nice to work with this. And once you have bought the program, once you've got, the utensils, the pen I think is very helpful. I don't know if you have to use an iPad pen for this. Maybe you could get a different brand of pen and it would be fine. But once you have the pen and everything, it's done. I don't have any subscription fee for Procreate, so as long as these things are working, I can take a picture of it and design it. You technically don't have to have an iPhone either to take a picture of it and airdrop it to this. You could certainly hold this up and take a picture. I just find that a bit cumbersome and I don't want to use that, which is why I use my phone. I feel like I can get a better quality photo of it that way, whichever way works for you guys is definitely the way to go. But if you guys are interested in seeing me design more of my quilts this way in sort of rather than doing the time lapse like I have shown you guys for some of the other ones, but actually like just going through and drawing things out and talking to you guys through it, or just sort of, showing you what I'm doing, please let me know, because it is kind of interesting to sort of see it come to life and kind of talk through it. Because sometimes I'm not sure, sometimes I'm doing stuff and I'm going, gosh, I don't know. And I'll take it to work and I'll ask my quilty friend if she thinks this looks good, or I'll ask my husband, which way does he think this would look good? So example being that I had two borders that I was looking at for the kite in a square quilt, and I ended up deciding on the one that I am using on that quilt right now because I showed them both to my husband and he thought that the one that I'm doing looked the best. And as I started to flesh it out, and add more, because that's the other thing. Something may look good once you do it, but once you start repeating it on the quilt, you may go, oh gosh, this is not going to work. So that's the other nice part, is that you can expand it out. And if you like it, great. If you don't, so easy to just erase it and go on. So that's why I love using that is why I love using my iPad and Procreate and my Apple Pencil to design my quilts. And as always, so this has been finally the end of the Sparrows quilt. I'm going to be working on designing it from here out. And then I also have got to get to work on this kite in a square quilt and get a lot of it done. So, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and if you have any questions or comments, please let me know and leave them down below, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.